Joining me now is Matt Parrino from the Syracuse Post-Standard to discuss the story that has really brought the sports world to a standstill. Hey, Matt, how are you? Thanks for joining me. I know it must be a very busy time in Buffalo. Let's just start with the latest as of this taping, 3:30 in the afternoon on Wednesday. What can you tell me about the latest in Damar Hamlin's status, his condition?
Yeah, so the Bills put out the latest update in that he is improving, but that he still remains in critical condition. We got an update last night from Damar's uncle, Dorian Glenn, who drove from Pittsburgh to Cincinnati after the injury, and said, but after he was resuscitated, his heartbeat was returned on the field. When he got to the hospital and put on a ventilator, that was 100% of the machine's air. That's been tapered down to 50% as of last night. So they're seeing small improvements in as he kind of battles through this thing, and now we're just kind of waiting for more here over the next couple of days.
His uncle has been something of the mouthpiece for his family, providing a little bit of insight into what must be a harrowing time in the hospital, and told CNN that he needed to be resuscitated twice before offering this latest update that he was, 100% reliant on the ventilator, and now that's down to 50, which by all accounts must be a good thing. Is there any sense from his uncle or anybody else, his manager, of when we might have an official update from the hospital, or learn a little bit more about when he might be awake? Any information about what the next 24 hours might hold?
Not really. And this is the kind of situation where I think every case is different. And from what I've learned anyway, from speaking to various doctors, hearing different doctors talk about what happened to him, it could be something where you wake up and you're fine in 12 hours. It could take as many as 4 days a week. So it's kind of just playing it by ear. I don't think at this point the hospital is going to take the lead on anything in terms of announcing anything. It'll probably come from the family, the NFL, or the Bills.
And as it relates to the Bills, I mean, Wednesday, traditionally a very busy day for them. What can you tell us about the latest from the team's vantage point here and what they're going to do for the rest of the week?
So they're back in the building today. I think most of them were back in the building yesterday, but today is an official walkthrough, which actually is not really out of the ordinary. Most game weeks this late in the season, they'd have a lighter type of practice on Wednesday, trying to mitigate some of the hits that the bodies take over the course of the season. So with the game this Sunday apparently still on, although there's been Troy Vincent was talking earlier today, and he said that they're going to leave it up to Sean McDermott and the Bills to dictate what ends up happening with this game. It's kind of just going to wait and see. I think as this story unfolds more, we learn more about what's going on with Damar and how it's going in the building. We have not been in there yet. I'm still in Cincinnati. I'm flying back here in a few hours to Buffalo. So we've seen a couple interviews. Deion Dawkins did one on ESPN, but we really haven't gotten a chance to talk to the players, and everybody's kind of, trying to predict what should happen or what they think should happen. But I think it's really going to come down to what's being said behind closed doors there, the players talking to the coaches and what they want to do. And we'll probably find more about that out tomorrow.
So you get the sense that tomorrow is going to be the media's first availability in terms of being able to get back in the building and talk with the players and the coaching staff?
I don't know. It hasn't been communicated. Just the latest that we got communication was that there was no media today. So it's kind of going to be, I think, a day by day situation. Tomorrow we'll wake up, we'll probably get further direction from the Bills. I mean, I think it could be tomorrow's like a media day where there's practice and everything. There also could be another day where there's no media availability. So it's a day-to-day thing.
I was so struck by Sean McDermott's reaction to this horrific event because Troy Vincent said on that NFL conference call that the coaches took the lead here. And this is me just strictly kind of my own observation. I I felt like watching Sean McDermott, he was the one that was making the decision in the best interest of his players. And, and Zach Taylor was happy to oblige in that. I mean, I know that you were there, so you might have different insight than me, but watching it, it really felt like he was the one that stepped in and said, you know what, my guys cannot play, cannot do this. Has there been any more clarity as to the timeline of events as it relates to the 5-minute warm-up and the communication as it was relayed through the league and the officials and the coaches about what really happened? Who ultimately said this game cannot go on?
Yeah, so a lot of confusion around that. And, part of it is like, getting some comments here and there. After the night of the game, 2 hours after Damar was taken to the hospital, the NFL held a conference call, and Troy Vincent, the EVP of game day operations, was asked about that 5-minute warm-up period that was suggested on the broadcast. And he said that was ridiculous, insensitive to even suggest, and at no time did the NFL ever consider resuming the game. Now, ESPN came out the next day and stood behind the comments that they received and what they said on the broadcast. And so we've waited for a more of a development here. Well, Zach Taylor today was asked specifically about this, and he said at no point during the game, while they were on the field, at no point from when he got injured to when he left for the ambulance to after that did they think about resuming the game. What I think probably happened was just a miscommunication at some point. Maybe that is protocol, but I don't think like after like an injury like that, there's probably like a protocol of a 5-minute, ramp up period where players get to warm up. But that Zach Taylor said that was never instructed to anybody as they were going through the process, and that wasn't actually what was happening. I think players were kind of just coming back out, not knowing what to do. And I thought Zach Taylor continued to just speak so eloquently and be so composed about this whole situation. And it goes back to how he handled it the night of. As they were kind of figuring things out, as the ambulance left, he had the wherewithal, as Sean McDermott was kind of talking to the officials and saying he needed some more time to process all of this as they were kind of going through this. He just simply walked across the field and said, let's just talk about this together. Let's take all the time that we need. And the first thing out of Sean McDermott's mouth to Zach Taylor, the one thing that he did say about their conversation was, I got to get to the hospital to be with Damar. I can't coach this game. And so, I mean, that means everything to me. I know that means everything to his team and to the fan base. I just think we're doing a podcast ourselves in a little while here, the first one we've done, and it's about talking about the way that the world is celebrating and supporting Damar Hamlin. And I really do think that Sean McDermott and Zach Taylor deserve a lot of credit, should be celebrated with how they handled all this for not only Damar, of course, who was at the forefront of importance when you're talking about the situation, but so many other people that were so dramatically affected by this situation. You saw the emotional reactions to, by his brothers and staff members. So, a lot going on there. And I think Zach Taylor's point that he made at the end of the press conference is really poignant and important. And he said they got to the right decision at the end, which I have maintained since it happened, that they did do what was right by postponing the game.
I absolutely agree with you. I think it is an example of one of the finest coaching moments we've ever seen in the league between both of them together collectively, making this decision on behalf of their players, understanding the gravity of the situation. And that's actually the first time that I've heard that insight that you gave me into what Sean McDermott was saying, which is that I have to go to the hospital. And I saw an image as well that wasn't confirmed, that I just saw on Twitter, that Zach Taylor was at the hospital as well. So, I mean, the way that these coaches have navigated an unthinkable, unprecedented circumstance, I think deserves so much credit. And regardless, I guess, of whatever the gaffe was on the part of ESPN or the league or what have you to wait so long before ultimately postponing this game, I think you're right as well in the fact that they reached the right decision. So, if you could just offer some insight, and I know I won't keep you too much longer, but it seems like this is a very close-knit locker room. It seems like these players really care for one another. We've heard a lot about Damar Hamlin, a lovable guy, a liked guy, his community toy drive, which has now exceeded $5 million. I mean, paint a picture for us of how traumatic this potentially was for a group that is as bonded together as Sean McDermott's group.
It is a very close locker room, every player. It's rare in sports, especially with a football team, when you have 60 some odd players in a locker room, to have the kind of bond that I think exists for this one. And there's probably a lot of examples of this across the league. Earlier this season, week 2 on Monday Night Football, Dane Jackson, who's a cornerback for the Bills in his 3rd season, he went to Pitt, the same school, played with Damar Hamlin at Pitt. And it was a really cool story when Damar was drafted, them getting to be in the same defensive backfield room again together. And I remember watching Damar in that moment when his best friend, Dane Jackson, was placed in the ambulance on week 2, and he suffered a serious neck injury. He ended up being okay. He's playing again. It was taken to the locker room. Tyrell Dotson, a linebacker for the Bills, was consoling Damar Hamlin in that moment, and he was weeping. I mean, he was, tears flowing down. I mean, this is his best friend. He's known him since they were children. And Tyrell Dotson sitting there, a guy that, is also on defense, but just almost like a family member, just console. I mean, that just, to me, it illustrated such the bond that exists between all of them. At one point, I felt like I was watching on Monday night. Kyer Elam is a rookie cornerback, obviously plays with Damar Hamlin, very close, tight-knit group in their own right. At one point, he had to turn around as everybody was kind of hovered around what was going on with with Damar Hamlin. He couldn't watch it anymore. He had to turn around, and I saw other members of the Bills team. I can't remember the specific ones now because there's so much happening in that moment, but they were just like holding him. And the compassion and these are like men in the most, competitive, primal, like sport that you can play, crying and emotions. You don't see that very often in the NFL world, at least not in that way. And it was almost just a very pure part of this whole thing. It's just a way that everybody came together. And in a macro sense, the way the world has now come together to show their support about all of this. I think Sean McDermott's greatest trait is his ability to understand the importance of the players' involvement in this whole operation. He allows them to be themselves, and he allows them to have a seat at the table that makes them feel empowered. And that's so important, especially when you think about all of the racial dynamics in 2022 that we still face. To be a white head coach and to sit across the table from all of these, young African-American athletes and say, I value your opinion. I value what you have to say. You're important, and I want you to help lead this whole operation. I've been critical at times of Sean McDermott. It's part of my job, as a football coach, as, the things that they do on the football field. It's part of the gig. But I don't know if I can say that I have more respect for many people in this world than I do for Sean McDermott in the way that he has built this whole thing in Buffalo, built this group that he has put together along with Brandon Beane, and the leader that he's shown to be in so many really important times.
That's tremendous insight. And that leads me to think, Matt, that this is still very much in the players' control in terms of moving forward here and deciding whether or not they want to play on Sunday. I mean, I know I'm asking you to speculate here because there's simply so much we don't know about, all right, how's this going to work? Are they going to make up this game? I personally feel like it would be a mistake for them to try to make up this game. But, all right, are they going to play 16 games instead of 17? How are they going to figure it out with the playoffs? But that would seem to indicate to me that the players are going to decide. That Sean McDermott is going to tell these guys, you don't have to do it if you don't want to do it. I don't know that to be true. I don't know if you have any insight into that, but if Damar Hamlin is still being intubated, if he's not conscious, if he's still recovering, and if his future is uncertain, I have a hard time believing that the players wouldn't have the autonomy to say, we cannot do this, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think one of the things that Troy said today, he had a 38-minute call with media members, was they're going to look to the team to dictate how they move forward in this. And I think that's perfectly, the right call. I mean, if you go to just the game night and the way that the league ultimately deferred to the officials, to Sean and to Zach, they're ground zero of this whole thing. They're the ones dealing with all the potential ramifications of every decision. So yeah, I think that the conversations that happen behind closed doors with, their players, their team personnel, that's going to really drive the bus on this whole thing.
Do you get any sense of the timeline for when they would need to make a decision about what they're going to do this weekend, or when we might hear from the league about how they're going to handle the seeding playoffs?
I mean, to a degree, they probably have to figure something out here in the next 24 hours, just from a sense of preparation perspective. You know, if they're going to play this game, I mean, they got to practice. You can't go into an NFL football game without practicing all week, especially coming off of, you know, what they went through emotionally on Monday night. So I would imagine it happens sometime soon. But again, it's at the same time, you're not going to rush anybody that's dealing with this. I don't think you should in terms of coming up with a decision.
Yeah, you've got a mental health issue now and also a physical safety issue with how violent the sport is and how difficult and necessary the preparation is. And so just to circle back, and then I'll let you go, you get the sense that the next update we're going to get on Damar Hamlin's condition is probably going to come from his family at some point?
That's not anything that I've been told. That's just like, it seems like that's the way that it's gone so far. There's still a lot of media at the hospital. I popped over there briefly before I'm about to get out of town today. So if they talk to more family members, I'd share the updates that way. Jordan, his marketing representative, has given a ton of updates as well. And then the team has released several statements. So I would imagine that at some point they'll probably continue to update the situation as well. And who knows, maybe there will be something that comes from the hospital. It just hasn't to this point. So I'd imagine that the family would continue. I think that there's an element to it, just giving the respect to the family to be able to handle the messaging the way that they feel it needs to be done.
And after visits from both head coaches and a number of players, from what you can tell now as you get out of town, there's nobody remaining at the hospital now with the exception of his family.
That's my understanding, but I don't know that 100%.
Okay. I really appreciate the up to the minute reporting, Matt, and for taking the time to share the latest. I know a lot of people feel like they're in a holding pattern, just waiting to kind of hear more about what the future is going to hold for Damar Hamlin, but clearly a young man that is so well liked and respected in the locker room. And to your larger point, I mean, the job that Buffalo has done as an organization up to this point of handling a horrific scene was nothing short of extraordinary. Thanks very much.
Thank you.